Welcome to UTech's podcast. Your host today from UTech is Kiran Mysore and Michael Inuma. Our guest today is someone who has dedicated his career to solving one of the most urgent challenges of our time, antimicrobial resistance. Joining us is Dr. Anand Anandkumar, co-founder and CEO of Bugworks Research, a company leading the global effort to develop next-generation antibiotics and oncology therapeutics from India. In part one, we trace Anand's career journey, how an engineer with a passion for system thinking found his way into biotech, and what inspired him to take an AMR, and what ultimately led to the founding vision of Bugworks. I'm excited for you to hear the story behind the mission. Let's get started. Hi, Anand, Kiran, and thank you very much for joining today.
Hi, Michael and Kiran. An absolute pleasure to be here. And thank you so very much for including me on this exciting platform. I look forward to our conversations.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very much.
Anand. My name is Kiran. I joined UTech in 2018. I lead our global investments. In fact, Bugworks was actually one of my first investment, actually second ever investment. A quick sort of one-liner. Anand will get more into it. Bugworks developing anti-cancer as well as antimicrobial resistance drugs. But what's unique is Bugworks was the first ever drug discovery investment from UTech. Before Bugworks, we had done platform companies like Peptide Dream and so on, but Bugworks was our first ever drug discovery investment back in 2018. And it was also the first case of investment by a Japanese VC firm in an Indian drug discovery company. What's also interesting is although Bugworks is a US company with India R&D, their preclinical studies happened in UK. Phase 1 is currently going on in Australia. They have investors from South Africa and a key R&D team in Japan as well. So it's a truly global effort. So over to Anand. Perhaps you can quickly introduce yourself and Bugworks in 2-3 lines.
Great. Thanks, Kiran. And happy to meet the audience that's listening to this podcast. So my background is actually, I'm an electronics engineer. I studied in a very storied institute called Anna University in Chennai and went to the US to do my PhD in biomedical engineering and VLSI. So I'm actually coming from a semiconductor physics and biomedical engineering background, spent a total of 15 years in the US doing various roles in the semiconductor industry, came back to India 25 years ago. In the year 2000, I did a couple of startups in the semiconductor space, which is called electronic design automation, where you use heavy duty modeling and simulation to simulate complex chips that have billions and billions of transistors. And then around 2007, 2008, nearly 18 years ago, completely moved from semiconductor into the biotech industry. And I'm extremely excited and honored to be heading up Bugworks, where, as Kiran mentioned, we are working on two huge areas that impact 8 billion people of the planet. One is antimicrobial resistance, pretty much infections that are uncurable by existing antibiotics. And we are trying to innovate and design a new class of antibiotics for very hard infections. Similarly, we are going after very hard to treat cancers like breast cancer, prostate cancer, gastric, pancreatic, brain cancer, which is called glioblastoma. So two large unmet needs that we're going after. And just to add on to what Kiran said, it's an absolute privilege for us that we got to work with UTech, and we'll talk about it more in the subsequent part of our podcast. And we feel so honored that we were the first life sciences investment that they did outside first life sciences investment in India that was done by UTech. So it's great. Small company, just 35 people, but honestly, we work with the whole world. We'd like to be an exemplar of where no one country can solve complex problems of the environment, of agriculture industry, of healthcare, etc. These are tough, deep science, deep tech, deeply layered, multi-parametric spaces. No one country owns the solutions to all of this. So one has to be humble about that fact and work with the world as their stage, be it investors, be it collaborators, or be it partners who do independent testing of the hypothesis that we generate inside the company. So innovation inside, execution outside, which we will talk about more later. And truly, I think the world is our stage.
Thanks, Anand. And you already touched upon it. You have a fairly non-linear journey. You have a PhD in George Washington University. You began your career in semiconductor. Would your younger self be surprised, younger semiconductor designer self be surprised that today you are running a life sciences company? Or did you always see some parallels between semiconductor and life sciences from your career? Yeah.
That's a very thought-provoking question. I don't think I would have imagined because I was doing so well in semiconductors, Kiran. I had a very stellar career in a company called Cadence Design Systems. That's very strong in Japan too, based in the Bay Area. And they moved me to India as an expat. And then I started a company in India called Magma Design Automation. I'm not the original founder. I started the India and China operation of this company. It was
Right.
going supremely well. We had everyone from Apple to Broadcom to Qualcomm as our customers, etc. I would never, my younger self would never have imagined. But I'll tell you something though, because I
Mhm.
grew up in a family that's got everyone is a doctor in the family. I got into medical school and went into medical school, and within 2 days, I ran away to engineering because
Oh, you did? I didn't know that actually.
I wanted to escape my family because they were all super, super, super high achieving doctors. And I said the stress is too much. And I got into a very reputed engineering, the University of Tokyo equivalent, if you will, in Chennai, the oldest engineering institution in South India. And therefore I ran away from it. But I was always influenced by seeing people, hundreds of people waiting outside my house because there were so many doctors. My dad was a very famous doctor. He saw tuberculosis patients, AIDS
Mhm.
patients for about 53 years. And believe it or not, the very first HIV AIDS patient in Southeast Asia walked into my house in 1983, 1984. So our family was known as the HIV doctor family, if you will. So I think there was some influence of wanting to give back to the world and do
I
something
see.
in healthcare. But the younger me would never have guessed that I would have
Mhm.
moved from semiconductor into running life sciences.
We'll come to
See.
your personal journey, but also just a plug on Japan. So I remember that when you were in semiconductor industry, especially in 90s and 2000s, Japan semiconductor industry was booming. I remember you said you used to come to Japan fairly often. How was your experiences there? And of course, during Bugworks time, you've come to Japan fairly often as well.
Right.
Any
So
thoughts on that?
yeah, even before I met you, Kiran, and had the absolute privilege of working with you tech, I have great experience in Japan. I pretty much was in charge of two Japanese customers when I was working in Cadence. One is Toshiba, and one is Oki Semiconductor, OKI, Oki. I think
Okay.
one was in Oki. Yeah.
Yeah,
One
correct.
was in Tokyo and one was just in the suburbs of Tokyo.
Yeah, Yokohama somewhere
Shin
maybe.
Yokohama. Shin
Yes,
Yokohama.
Yokohama. Okay.
right.
Shin Yokohama. Yeah, if my memory is right.
Greater
And
Tokyo area still. Yeah,
yes. So I enjoyed, and since I is sitting in Bay Area, I was working with the Japanese audience, doing very advanced chip designs using MIPS architecture. And I was an expert in an area called clock tree synthesis. When Japanese chips were very complex with very, very, very complex clock chains, and I had to bring all of these clock chains to speak together. And the experience was phenomenal. First of all, very, very hardworking, polite, very, very diligent, dedicated to their work. And so I spent 2 summers in Japan, not full summers, part of summers back, I think in 90, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, maybe 95, 96. And the experience was phenomenal. And I told myself, I hope someday I can work more in depth with Japanese, but I never expected that would come through you, Kiran, and you
okay,
tech.
fantastic. Fantastic. So we talked about it that you were always inspired by your family of doctors and so on and so forth. So life sciences was always sort of in the
Hmm.
background, but at some point it did come to the foreground, right? You did make your personal transformation from semiconductor industry to life sciences. What was the story that inspired you to do so, apart from the opportunity?
Thanks. So as I mentioned, career was superb. I had become a CEO by 32 or 33 in semiconductor, but something was playing inside me that I wanted to do something hugely impactful in health. Not that semiconductor is not impactful. It impacts every aspect of the world. We know that. But I wanted to do something directly in health. But it's like just thought process go on. Sometimes personal tragedies and events that happen in your life that look really bad to others can be used to your advantage. I'm such a person. I just face adversity. I take it on my chin, on my neck. And when I went through my own healthcare challenges very early in my life, I told myself one of the ways of fighting those healthcare challenges and those healthcare demons in my head was to get into life sciences. A. B. I was also quietly looking at systems modeling, the days of systems modeling,
I see.
where semiconductor technologies were being spoken about to be used in finance industries, etc. So when all of this, I put it together to say, can semiconductor be used in areas like healthcare, my own healthcare challenges, my family's background that inspired me to do something for humanity and make a difference using technology for deep impact, lasting impact. These three things came together that became the perfect storm, Kiran. That I think motivated me to move from semiconductor into biotech. Having said that, Cellworks, the company which is the precursor to Bugworks, was a semiconductor company moved into biology. We
I see.
use, for your audience who works in chip design area and semiconductor, we use technologies called SPICE to do simulation of analog circuits. We use
Right.
technology like Verilog and VHDL to simulate digital circuits. So my crazy idea was, can we use such techniques to simulate biological pathways?
Right.
Sort of laughable because it was so audacious. And I didn't get into it because I'm this genius who had this idea. I got in because of a passion, and then we converted passion into reality.
Right. Yeah, yeah. People usually say that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And you also mentioned that is very true that I think a lot of in silico modeling in computational drug discovery is quite. You can draw parallels to the simulation led, chip design industry back then. We briefly touched upon it. Let's talk about the Bugworks founding story now, which is quite unique and quite fascinating, actually. You
Yeah.
briefly touched upon it. Before Bugworks, there was Cellworks, a company in the cancer simulation space. Your other co-founders of Bugworks were working in AstraZeneca back then. This was 2010s probably. How did it all come about from Cellworks through AstraZeneca to the founding of Bugworks?
Right. So Cellworks was put together by four of us from the Bay Area and Bangalore. Bangalore is India's Bay Area, if you will, to try to do modeling and simulation. And today it's used to do cancer therapy, personalized cancer therapy
Well,
test.
the Bay Area
Cellworks.
Bangalore corridor, sometimes I call it as Beluru. So Bay Area and
Beluru.
Bangalore. Yeah, yeah.
Nice. I learned
Yeah, yeah.
something. So Beluru, I'm completely Beluru guy. Everything I've done in my last 25 years has been Beluru, Bangalore Bay Area. I mean, it's incredible, how the cultures match, thinking and cultures. So in Cellworks, we decided to focus on oncology. Okay? But then when I was there in Cellworks again, thought process, because I come from a family that is quite storied in the anti-infective space. I started seeing things like tuberculosis, antimicrobial resistance, people dying of unsolvable infection. And it wasn't a very sexy area like infection and GLP and all that.
Right.
So again, this is why when you seed yourself with an exciting thought, that is the starting process of creating great companies. I think it's finally that seed and how you nurture the seed that creates a banyan, right? If you will. So Kiran, it's very interesting that I asked myself whether we can use cancer modeling simulation pathways to model infection. And I did cold call. I went around talking to the pharmaceutical industries in Bangalore. Very few are there because India is known for generics. Drug discovery is very new in India.
Yeah,
AstraZeneca
especially
was
at
the
the time.
only real R&D. I'm talking about 2013, 2014-ish, right?
Mhm.
Then I actually cold call. This is for your entrepreneurs in there. It's okay to get slapped, to get doors shut on you. But if you have that determination, you just go ahead and make things right with no
Mhm.
excuses. So I walked into AstraZeneca and they told me, are you crazy? First of all, you're a semiconductor guy. You're moved into drug discovery and cancer therapies. And now you're coming talking to us. We are only doing infection. So I said,
Mhm.
why don't I use mathematical modeling that is used for cancer to model TB? And that's how AstraZeneca and Cellworks came together. And somebody believed in us. The Wellcome Trust funded us for almost 1.2 million pounds to
Mhm.
put this together. And we simulated tuberculosis and came out with exciting solutions for tuberculosis that was tested and validated by AstraZeneca and published very highly.
Right.
Around that time, AstraZeneca decided to close its operation
Yeah, stroke
in
of
India.
luck, right?
Stroke of luck to say they're going to focus on cancer. And what a great decision AstraZeneca took to focus on cancer because that's where the money is. But they left behind 25, 30 years of experience in AstraZeneca Bangalore. Now, I
Mhm.
could have said, thank you very much. We did some good work together. We published for humanity. I said, wait a minute. Is this the writing on the wall? Do I keep my antennas fully tuned to look for opportunities and create opportunities? Don't wait for opportunities to happen. So then I spoke to these experienced folks who looked at me with disdain to say, you are an electronics engineer. What are we going to do with you? And so it took a lot of convincing, Kiran, to get people like Bala, Shahul, and Shantanu, etc., to work with me. So the AstraZeneca closure,
Mhm.
my thought process of wanting to do a new company in Bugworks allowed us to spin out Bugworks. I could have done nothing on Bugworks had it not been for that deep talent pool that came from AstraZeneca.
Great.
So
Even
I owe
even
whatever success we have to date. We have a long way to go, but whatever success we have to date, I owe it to that talent pool.
yes,
Please
even
go ahead.
today, most of the Bugworks members still have some connect with AstraZeneca one way or the other, right?
Very
That's
much so.
very
Very much so.
fascinating.
Sorry, just for your audience to know, one
Mhm.
good R&D center in any country like AstraZeneca has spawned off more than 25 companies
No,
just in
fantastic.
Bangalore.
Yeah.
Just in Bangalore, I think it's 27, including Bugworks, Biomonita, etc., etc. So it's very interesting that if you have one center of excellence, and the work you all are doing as UTech in creating these exciting companies is not to just investing in one company and getting returns for your LPs. You're actually creating an ecosystem that's going to
Correct.
spawn off so many other great things for Japan and the rest of the world.
So let's talk about Bugworks now. So in your own words, can you maybe summarize what Bugworks does, and especially touching upon the key pipeline of Bugworks as well?
Yeah. So Bugworks has got two verticals, an anti-infective and an anti-cancer. In the anti-infective, I'm very happy to share with you all, with humility, that the last novel antibiotic class happened somewhere in the 1960s or 70s, at
Hmm.
least 50 plus years. And Bugworks has cracked the superbug and has come up with a platform that can take out superbugs, basically antibacterial platform, a novel antibiotics that can work from head to toe, basically
Hmm.
on any pathogen that cause very bad infections, that from brain fever to pneumonia to bloodstream infection to intra-abdominal infection to sexually transmitted diseases to serious wound infections, this antibiotic class can work. So we've come up with a platform. The platform has allowed us to create a bunch of assets in the antibiotics. And Kiran, in the antibiotics area, we are
Hmm.
going through a phase 1 clinical trial in Australia. We
Correct.
should have been close to phase 3 by now, but this is how difficult deep science is. We hit a
Yes.
key problem in our phase 1, and that has taken us 2.5 to 3 years to solve. So
Hmm.
complex. Either we could have walked away and said, thank you, we are done. But thanks to investors like UTech, the belief in the WHO that WHO and US government, which we'll come to later, had in us, we continue to go, and we are very close to the breakthrough of completing a phase 1 clinical trial next year. So that is the antibiotic story. Why it's unique? Why it's so unique? It's
Hmm.
broad antibiotic. It's called a broad spectrum. It is IV, intravenous for serious patients all over the world. And it's also oral, tablet form that can go to many parts of the world that don't have
Hmm.
access to
And
antibiotics. I'll
and you are
pause to take
the
your question.
Yeah, you are the only, or Bugworks lead asset is the only asset as per World Health Organization, which is both novel, broad spectrum, IV, and oral as well, right? So to that end, it's
Yes.
very unique
Yes, while it's
across the board.
flattering, it's also worrisome that there's no such assets in the pipeline, right?
Mm,
Because we all know how long drug discovery, deep science takes, failure rates are high, etc.
right.
So when we spoke to the WHO and US government who do the close tracking of this, there is nothing else. Which is why, despite our challenges, they
Hmm.
continue to support us because they're like,
And
hey, if you get through phase 1, we should be on the highway soon.
yeah, and
But
ju-
yeah, absolutely right.
just so listeners realize, I think the problem of antimicrobial resistance, if nothing is done by 2050, more people may die due to infections as opposed to cancer. So that is the magnitude or scale of the problem that we are dealing with, right?
Absolutely correct. Very well put. It's what it's called the silent pandemic. And right now, the WHO has put AMR, antimicrobial resistance, which means untreatable infections with today's antibiotics, as top 3 problems facing humanity, along with war crimes, climate change, and
I see.
AMR. And as you
Great.
said, in less than 20 years from now, we could be at a catastrophic situation. Unfortunately, that situation is happening sooner than we had thought, particularly in low to
I
medium
see.
income countries. But nobody is safe until all
Hmm.
of us are safe. A pathogen that you can pick up in Africa or India
Hmm.
or from London can spread everywhere because we are all such a mobile group of people, right? So you're right.
I see.
It's a big problem everywhere. So that's our antibiotic story. And about
Hmm.
6 years ago, lots of thinking, deep thinking, allowed us to think that can we use some techniques that we use to kill a bug to kill a cancer cell? That's the easiest way of putting it. Obviously, it's far more complex and multiparametric than that. And we said, can the same group of people that work on antibacterial work on anti-tumor? And the
Hmm.
rest thing is now we have an exciting preclinical pipeline of assets in cancer. And Kiran, at least 2 or 3 of those target spaces are first in class right now, without getting
Right.
into too much specificity, which means just like our antibiotic is the first of its kind, at least 2 of our assets in the oncology pipeline have the potential of being first in class and can address a whole bunch of tumors like breast cancer, pancreatic, gastric, lung cancer, as well as brain cancer. So we are very excited to work on 2 areas. It's also a good way to do some risk mitigation
Right.
and also cater to a completely different world. One is more for the low to medium income countries. One is more
Correct.
for the Western countries. So can you do a business plan that can fit 8 billion requirement, 8 billion
Right.
planet
And
requirement.
And your vision is to, of course, build a generational biotechnology company, and therein lies you focusing on the full gambit of both AMR and anti-cancer. Just moving on, so I think
Yes.
you mentioned it earlier. Bugworks has this unique culture of innovation inside and execution outside. Can you explain its relevance, perhaps, to building a lean yet powerful science and technology startup? Because obviously, capital is not easy, and so on and so forth. So, how did a team of 25, 30 people managed to do so much over the last decade?
I think that's the most important question. And for anyone listening here who's planning to do life sciences, or not just life sciences, deep science, deep tech, you need a 7 to 10 year vision clearly. It's highly capital intensive, so you need to figure out ways of taking non-dilutive or non-equity based funding and financing as much as possible, both for credibility as well as for survivability. And you use the world as your stage. So let me talk about each of the points. As a company, Kiran, we have raised a substantial amount of money, almost, I would say 60-40 or 65-35, 65% in equity, 35%
Hmm.
in grants, substantial
Hmm.
amount through the best grants in the world. This could be Wellcome
Correct.
Trust. This would be United States government grants called CARBEX. It could be the
Hmm.
WHO grants called GARDP, NIH, NIAID, Gates Foundation, you name it. We've been funded
Hmm.
by these global because that also puts you in an orbit where you get independently validated by others who are looking at hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So they don't need to drink my Kool-Aid. They need to choose projects that are truly world-class, number one. Number two, when you're not sitting in the Bay Area or Boston and you're sitting in Bangalore or even in Japan, you need to climb a taller mountain to
Mm.
prove yourself sometimes at these global things. So your science has to be
Top
best.
notch.
You can't say because I'm from Bangalore, somehow you need to cut me some slack. Those days are long over. Your science has to be the best. You need to have best IPs that are basically given to you by US, by Japan, everyone. Intellectual property has to be top class. Publications, peer review has to be good. You need to be seen and heard in the key ecosystems worldwide. We decided never to be a 50%, 100% member. We're only about 32, 33 people. We kept it very lean. A. B. We did not want to put millions of dollars into infrastructure. So we sit inside an incubator in Bangalore called
Hmm.
C Camp. So it's
Right.
very important to use other people's infrastructure as much
Mm.
as possible. And they have very expensive equipment, some of them running into $6, $7, $8 million, which would have been ridiculous for us to have invested. So you sit in somebody else's infrastructure, you pay monthly fee, and you use it. Three, what happens in deep science, Kiran and Maiko, is there is always a thinking that you are biased by your own data. Right? This is very key, particularly, I'm sorry to say, if you're not from these established big ecosystems like Boston and Bay Area and San Diego and Seattle, there's sometimes a feeling that, oh, could these guys be somehow biased? So we
Hmm.
wanted to remove that bias very early, and we said, till we do the intellectual property work inside Bugworks, and we have a hypothesis that we have proof on, we will get all of our work done outside by the most
Mm.
reputable labs. So today, with humility, I can tell you that whether it's a big pharmaceutical company or grants, they look at Bugworks data, never giving it as something as a bunch of guys sitting in Bangalore developing. No way. It's Bugworks.
Mm.
It's a global company, global footprint, global thinking, global outlook. They're getting the stuff done from the best labs in Japan, in London, in US, or in India.
This
Right.
is
So that's
a.
the thing of doing innovation inside.
Mhm.
You basically work with the best labs all over the world. So your data is robust because in deep science and deep tech, it takes you many years to get to revenue. Your real credibility is the currency you create in terms of somebody else has validated your data. That currency
I see.
is invaluable to the valuation of your company.
This is relevant for a lot of our companies as well who want to go global. So what you're telling is it's a very intentional choice pretty much from day one, both in terms of necessity as well as in terms of the scale of the company you want to build. This going global was a strategy for you from day one. And just
Yes.
perhaps doubling down on the theme, very few startups I know of, at least in Asia, has leveraged the global ecosystem quite the way Bugworks has done, especially with the grant relationships with the US and Carbex that we mentioned, which is a top authority in antimicrobial resistance, as well as Bugworks a few years back became one of the first companies, definitely the first in Asia, to partner directly with World Health Organization's unit called GARDP, in a landmark licensing deal. Could you touch upon those, especially the World Health Organization partnership, and how it has been helpful for Bugworks?
And I'll start my answer. Thank you for the question. I'll start my answer once again saying that these grants that you're mentioning, Kiran, in fact, I myself gave through a challenge to my team early on, saying that it's going to be some years before we see revenue. Let's see whether we can crack through grants and make non-equity based money coming to the company, both for credibility and survivability. But the two grants you mentioned, CARB-X, combating antibiotic resistant bacteria. That's CARB-X, is a more than $1 billion fund set up by the United States government through BARDA, which is part of Health and Human Services. And money came in from Wellcome Trust, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, those days, now it's called Gates Foundation, Japanese government, many top governments put money into CARB-X. When we applied, we were the first company CARB-X funded 2018 onward. So now it's almost,
Right.
8 years, they still fund us more than $20 million to date. It was a less than 10% success rate. Now it's less than 5% success rate to get into CARB-X. They took a bet on us. When they first met us, they said bunch of guys sitting in Bangalore trying to do a hard problem. And then when they met the team and went through the in-depth interview, we got awarded and they continue to support us. So CARB-X put us in the high league where folks from the US, Japan, Europe, everywhere said, I think this group is trying to do something really important and their science is not second to anybody else. We don't know whether it will succeed. Only time will say whether it will succeed, but it's not second to anybody. That's the key thing. If anything in deep science and deep tech, you're not guaranteed success, but you want
Scientific
to be
validation.
exactly. You want to be in the top 5% and say, my science, my deep tech is best in the world. Now I will work towards making it successful. Success is not guaranteed. It takes tenacity and years and funding and everything. But that's CARB-X. With the WHO, we got a lucky break. And I must tell Mako and Kiran that I have this concept of a word called go to globe that we can talk about a little more. Go to globe. You know, while people said, oh, India is great, you should do stuff only for India. I don't believe in only thinking local. We use local intellect and local ecosystems, but one has to think global to survive in deep science and deep tech. You can't think that you can only solve one country's problem and somehow create a great business. At least it doesn't happen in deep science. Maybe in tech it's okay, but not in deep science. So we started talking to the WHO 6-7 years ago, and they're very strict, very tough to get through, bureaucratic, etc. WHO has a group called GARD-P, Global Antibiotic Research and Development Partnership, who have only funded 3 assets to date. And the only asset they funded from this part of the world, that's not even in phase 2 trial, we are just in phase 1 trial, is Bugworks. But in return, what do they get? They get access to all the low-income countries in the world. So we looked at it. And thanks to you, Kiran, and others in our board, we were able to convince our board that giving up access to our product for the low-income countries, it's a good thing. You get WHO on the table. There is no bigger validation than WHO. They're very tough to please. They took 2 years to sign documents, 1.75 years to sign documents, but they did it. Number 2, Kiran, the fact that our innovation can go to 100 plus of the low-income countries, even for our investors and for us, it makes us feel good that we're doing work that's not just meant, just for one small audience. It can go everywhere. So this go to globe strategy became a reality because we got WHO on the table. Plus, they are investing $40 million, $20 million in our IV product, $20 million in our oral product. So it's not small amount of money, but we have given in return more than 100 plus countries.
It's also a smart business strategy, right? Because most life sciences companies, drug discovery companies are reliant just on licensing their assets to big pharma, and which may or may not happen until phase 1, phase 2, etc. But you could actually, even before at the preclinical sort of stages itself. By the way, you mentioned go to globe. That reminds me of Japan had this weird campaign like go to travel and go to eat during the COVID.
We did have that.
And the joke was people did all that and go to hospital.
Oh God! Oh my goodness!
But anyway,
that's interesting. Yeah.
So just maybe a quick 1 minute on this. Building a deep tech company is challenging in itself, but building from India, especially in 2014, must have been challenging. Bugworks has so many near-death experiences time and again. How did you overcome them?
Yeah, the toughest thing of deep science, deep tech, anywhere in the world is funding and having a set of investors who back you. So a couple of things. First and foremost, and I say this very openly to this audience that's listening, We just got lucky. I got lucky. I met Kiran in 2018, and then UTech happened for us. That level of support, to have one anchor investor who believes in us, who cuts us slack. And we all need slack if you're working in areas like life sciences, satellite communication, etc. And who believes in us and who always backed us through the toughest times of COVID, post COVID, our failures when we went to phase one. They could have walked away, but having one solid anchor investor like we had with UTech has made a huge difference. I'd like to state that upfront, and I'm not bashful in stating so. So those of us who have support from companies like UTech are really lucky. Number two,
Mhm.
Kiran, cash management is the
Mm.
toughest thing. If you ask me, my job is going around the world trying to raise money and awareness for the company and trying to manage the cash because it's very tough. Unlike in tech, where you say, what is your monthly burn rate? And you can control your monthly burn rate. In deep
Mm.
science, it's very choppy, very lumpy. Suddenly you have an experiment that's $480,000. And once you start it, I can't pull back and cut it. I can cut salaries, but I can't cut that dog experiment that is started because if you cut it, you lose it all. It's a very one
Mm.
or zero. So you have to plan these lumpy, choppy things very carefully. We are not perfect. We have made lots of mistakes, which is why we had very near-death things. I think the fact that we had an anchor investor in UTech and the
Mm.
fact that the United States government backed us.
Right.
Every time I needed a reference, I go to Carbex and they pick up the phone and say, you know what, this company, Bugworks, they need to survive, they need to do well for the world. We're not doing them a
Mm.
favor. They are doing the world a favor. Now with the WHO on the table and the head of GARDP gets on a phone to talk to investors, angel investors or institutional investors saying, the WHO has seen the whole world. This is the best
Mm.
product in the pipeline. These things are so very important. So you need to keep these, not tricks, but you need to keep these props ready as a deep science company to say, what story are you going to tell when you're desperate? What real story, not fabricated, what real story are you going to say when you're desperate? So that your existing investors believe in you. You manage your cash flow internally to the company so that you don't confuse your stakeholders, stakeholder management. And three, can you have credibility built in different key pockets of the world who will come to your rescue when times are tough? I'm still
Got it.
still not easy, and we still
Hmm.
struggle through it. Kiran, you know this very well. We still struggle through it, but somehow we managed to swim out despite COVID,
Right.
despite our challenges in phase one, etc. But it takes a lot of tenacity. Your messaging has to be very clear, and your
Mm.
stakeholder engagement has to be transparent,
Hmm.
regular, and exceptionally clear.
Right.
Stakeholder management.
Got it. On that right note, on that high note, we can probably wrap up phase one, right, Michael?
Yeah. And then thank you very much for sharing your journey
Thank you.
and super insightful story about Backworks and an ecosystem around it. So although there are so much more we want to explore, but we'll take a short break here. So in the second half, we'll dive deeper into Backworks' relationship with UTech and the future projection as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back.